Okay. So there's a lot of stuff you need to know about, about the mechanics of how grading is done, what the criterion are, who the LAs are. So we are all required to fill a document, and that document is linked from the course page that covers some of the basic questions that are asked by this document. Okay, so you should all read this. I noticed actually a few of you were actually, while I was editing this document yesterday, a few of you were actually viewing it, so that's good. You're ahead of the others. I won't go through all the details in this document. Some of them you know already, like what the prerequisites are. You're here because you fulfilled the prerequisites. But you should go through this document carefully because it's going to be important how you structure your work. Okay. What I'll do is most of what I have here doesn't require interpretation, so I won't be giving you that interpretation, and I'll just cover couple of things that are important that do require some explanation. So distributed systems, you all think are most of you think are important, but that's not a subject that undergrad curriculums normally cover. Okay, very few curriculums cover. So if you know this stuff, you're ahead of the other schools that don't cover this. Okay, the flip side is there's no textbook. Okay, so the question is, what resources do you use to learn? And you notice I use PowerPoint, and I'm happy to create PDFs out of these PowerPoints and distribute them, so those will be available to you. Okay. In addition, I'll also give you PowerPoints, the raw PowerPoint also. So I do use animation, and you lose that information in a PDF. More importantly, if you notice on the upper left, you see a little box that tells you that what I'm saying is being recorded. Okay, so you will also get and an indication that there is a recording is right here. So this is a slide picture I've taken, and this little speaker here tells you that there's a recording associated with the slide. Okay, so what do you do with this? You can click on it, and you'll get a media control box, and you can actually play all the audio that was recorded with the slide. But it will not be synchronized with the animations. Okay. So if you want animations and the audio synchronized, you just do slideshow on the recording, on the PowerPoint, and the slideshow will automatically move with and it'll advance with the audio in a synchronized form. Okay, so that's something you have, and you can always escape out into, if you don't want to listen to the whole audio because you know what's going on and you don't want to go through all the animations because you remember them. You can always escape out and go back to viewing it in the normal mode. And I've tried this on an Android, and there's a particular WPS at least office will also play do the slideshow with the recordings. Okay, so if you want to look at this in the bus on your mobile computer, you can do that. I'm sure the same capability is available on iPhone too. So like I said, you can escape out into unsynchronized or no audio mode. And also, one can create YouTube videos out of the PowerPoints, and then you have all the YouTube facilities like playing at twice the rate. But you don't have slide-based browsing, and that's something you need PowerPoints for. So a friend of mine at Microsoft actually developed something called Office Mix on my requests actually. That allowed you both capabilities, but he's left the company and the product has gone too, unfortunately, it seems. At least the server part. So that capability is not there. So you have to choose between these two things. If you want slide-based recording, you go to PowerPoint, or if you want just the regular recording. So the question then is, how do you exactly record? Well, I'm recording it right now live. That's one way to do recording. I could also just sit at home or in my office and do the studio recording. And in many flipped classes that you've taken, that's what happens. The instructor records ahead of time and you watch it later. Maybe, right? Or you can do live recordings, which I've done in my previous classes always. And they both have pros and cons, which have troubled me. So studio recording issue is that at this time, you know, this is the time that you all allocated to be in this class. Okay? You'll feel hopefully guilty if you're not here. If I give you something ahead of time, you know, you have to find the time to record, to see it, and there's always something more important. So you probably won't view it, okay? You meaning everybody. And so since there's no fixed time, there's no guarantee students will actually view it. And from my point of view, I just can't speak to a computer. I've tried it once. It was a satellite broadcast, and I was just talking to a void, you know, and hoping somebody was listening to me. So that's a problem. Okay, that's why I've never done a studio recording. What I've done is live recording. Okay, and I have learned from students all the problems with that. That there's often long interactions that are of interest to only a few students, and that it's okay if when you listen to it live, but then you have to listen to it every time you want to go and review that same material. Okay, so that becomes a problem. More important. It's picking up what I'm saying through a small microphone. That means what you say at that corner is not going to be picked up. Okay, so you just hear half the conversation. Okay? And all this slowing down worsens the problem that, you know, audio takes time to go and listen to, and so these recordings are meant to allow you to study for the exam, to go and do assignments, and it just takes too much time to review. So I've been wondering what to do, actually. And, you know, whenever there's sort of two sets of ideas that compete with each other that are pros and cons, you try to sort of see, mix them up somehow. Okay? So can I come up with a hybrid approach? And here's my sort of vision. Okay, I'm going to call it experimental because I've never done this before. It's very unnatural to me, but hopefully as I use it, it'll become natural. So one alternative is that I just give you if you've ever been to a conference, which most of you haven't, but in conferences you can't interrupt the speaker while they're giving the first 20 minutes talk. And then in the last session you go and ask questions. Okay? If you ever go to a colloquium, that's the same thing. Okay? Now, I'd like to make my course use the Socratic method where you're just answering a bunch of questions that are related to each other. And so this becomes like a one-way traffic. Okay? But what I will do is I'll ask rhetorical questions and I'll answer them. And I'll also give answers that I've seen before based on live lectures I've given. Okay? And so try to hold your questions, note them down. It'll be good. If you note them down, they'll probably sink in. And then we'll go into a non-recording mode where we'll sort of, you know, answer the questions. And if you don't have questions, I'll try to ask you some questions myself, okay, to get class participation. Like I said, I've never done this before. I'm just used to an interactive class. But what I'm really doing, and by the way, I do have, this material has been covered before, more or less, every time I change some things. And where you do have access to live recordings, so which are, you know, so if you like live concerts, you can always sort of, you know, go to that approach. If you like the studio polished stuff, more polished stuff, you've got this alternative. And what's really happening here is we're having to choose. Okay, ideally there should be no recordings. I should give a crystal clear lecture that you all understand, and more importantly, you remember. Okay, I think I can try to do the first part, but the second part is impossible. There's just too much information, you know, that's competing for your brains, and people forget things. You know, I ask a question and he'll answer it today, and I ask the same question 2 days later, and the same person who answered the question 2 days ago will not remember their answer 2 days ago. Okay, so the lectures that I'm going to give are going to be very integrated with your assignments. So that, you know, what I say here is of at least value for the assignments point of view. Maybe they are also value in real life later. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try. And you're not. I also have some written documents. They're not complete, and so I'll provide you with links to those too. And written documents are always more concise. Okay, sometimes because they're more concise, they're harder to understand. And most of my slides will use examples, code examples, and that code is all available on Git. Okay, so that's also available to you. Okay, so that's the class structure. That's one important thing. The most important thing, of course, is how you're going to be graded. So most of you expect some implementation here. So yes, there will be implementation, and lots of you have said that it's challenging, and it's challenging because of the implementation. Not because the implementation is a large amount of code, but because it's complex code, okay? Which is kind of nice because you have to debug a smaller piece of code. But the debugging is more intense. So we will learn concepts also that are behind the assignments. And the final will be non-cumulative. It'll build on the midterm stuff, so you can't just ignore that, but it'll be non-cumulative. So I'm giving equal weight to both, even though in the final you'll have more time to finish your exam. Okay. So there'll be 40% of the grade will be on assignments, and we'll get interaction in class in many ways. We'll hopefully get some interaction after I've given the lecture. But more important, we're going to have some quizzes also done in class, and they'll be collaborative. And I have taught this class before, and that generates a lot of interaction. Okay? A lot of times my questions are phrased not precisely, so that itself will result, just interpreting the question will result in a lot of discussion. But maybe I've ironed those parts out by now. But in general, the answers are subtle, and so that's where I think the most learning is going to happen. Okay? And that's where you need ready access to information. Okay, that's regular credit. Okay, anybody who's taken courses from me before knows that I give a lot of extra credit, and there's many forms of extra credit. There'll be extra credit assignments, extra credit quizzes. So I don't know exactly what they will be at this point and what the weightage is. And so if you love to program, you can do more work on assignments, and quizzes is of course the more conceptual part. Like I said, I do want to encourage interaction with this lecture mode I'm talking about. I don't know how much we'll get, but I'm hoping after the lecture there will be interaction. And every time somebody answers a question that I've posed, to me that's as impressive as answering a question on an exam. Because here's a question I asked you, and even if you just don't answer it correctly, if you even just give some answer, you've thought about the question, you understood it enough. So obviously, it makes sense to give weight to the answers that you provide. Okay. So I've asked people to document the answers that they provided, because I can't remember your names and answers. So on Piazza, you maintain a diary in which you go in and you mention the question and the answer. And some people have misinterpreted what I said and have just gone and noted down every question and answer rather than just the questions they answered. And that seems like a worthwhile thing to do too. So what if you're shy? The fact that you noted it down sunk into your brain, and that should be rewarded too. So I've started rewarding that too. Okay, that even if you never answer a question yourself, if you just note down the question and the answer, that's good for you, especially because, like I said, even if I'm going to have these short audio recordings, it is still audio, and text that you've written. If you can read your handwriting better than I can read my handwriting, is going to be a more efficient way to understand stuff. Okay. And something I tried in my 524 class last semester, and I'm going to sort of do that in this class too. So a lot of times you get rewarded for what you know rather than what you learned. So you may know before you've come into the class. We have two prerequisites for this course, and some of you have done networking, some of you have done operating systems, some have done both. But those of you who've done only one of the two prerequisites are going to learn more than those who've done both. And the way you learn often is by facing difficulties and overcoming them. So if you think the course is difficult, then guess what? I'm going to reward you for every difficulty you face. Okay, that you note down and articulate. Okay, so that's going to be another way to get credit. And so the general principle I'm trying to apply here is that there are many ways to succeed, many ways to learn something, and I want to not exclude any. I want to sort of encourage each of these ways. Okay, and some of them take all the ways. So in the 524 class I just taught, the person with the highest grade got 127% out of 100. Okay, so it is possible to get that, but you have to work hard. It's not as if they weren't C's and D's, though. Okay, so there's a big gap between the ones, there can be a big gap between the ones who take these opportunities and those who don't. Okay? But I am giving you opportunities. So if you mess up the midterm, which often people do because it's the first midterm they've taken from me perhaps, there are ways to recover from that. Okay? And in addition, I apply a fudge factor. So typically what's happened is that a person who answers all our questions is often typically also very lazy to go and note down anything. So I've seen students like that who just have answered questions but never noted down anything, and they've answered given good answers. So I give them, just because they were so noticeable that I knew their names, I've given them some weight in the grade at that point. Last time in 524, there was one student. It was a project-based course, so one student missed out on A1, got 0 on it, but A2, A3, A4 all built on A1. So I used the fudge factor with that student too. Okay, so that's something that I have the right to apply, and I will advertise how I used it. But typically, what happens is that anybody who's on the borderline will be tempted to go and ask me, "Hey, give me a fudge factor, please." So the fudge factor is something that I give. You don't ask for it, okay? And trust me that I will find the cases that are deserving. Okay. Collaboration. So I encourage you guys. Typically, what happens in classes I teach is that there's a lot of programming, and students before the class are discussing with each other how to do the programs at the high level, not at the code level, but at the in English, okay, at the algorithmic level. Okay, so that's encouraged. Not only is it legal, it's encouraged. That's how you'll really learn. Not only the person receiving knowledge, but the person giving knowledge is going to probably learn more. Okay? That's why being an LA and TA is so rewarding. But if you just share code or share the diary text, so diary text is where you note down questions and answers. If you just take somebody else's questions and answers and they're not in your words, that's plagiarism. Okay? You can look at each other's code. Okay, if you're helping somebody with debugging code, that's fine, and you're not going to be memorizing that code, so that's just fine. Okay. And what I also tend to do is, somebody was saying that my assignments are 30 pages long. What happens there is that I try to anticipate every problem you might face and write it down there, rather than, which is I think more efficient than you're having to come to arrays. And this is the first time I actually have arrays in this course. I haven't taught this course enough times to get something going. Have past students. So I typically provide the solutions in small print, and I say, look at that only if you're stuck. Okay, and try to be disciplined about that, and try to solve the problem on your own, and then look at that stuff. And the rationale there is that if you guys can talk to each other in English about the solutions, why can't you look at my English solution descriptions also? Okay? And there's a lot you can learn by just translating a solution in English into code. There's a lot you can learn, and that's sort of the principle I apply. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about the lecture structure, learning resources, regulatory requirements, and extracurricular requirements. Okay, and